My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I need to tell you about the day I discovered that my father had secretly given my sister $500,000 while telling me I was only good enough for a diner job. What happened next will change how you think about family loyalty forever. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I accidentally stumbled upon the bank statement that would shatter everything I believed about my family. I was house-sitting for my dad while he was on a business trip, just watering his plants and checking the mail like any dutiful daughter would do. That's when I saw it, a Wells Fargo statement sticking out from under a stack of magazines on his kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was just moving the mail to make room for his coffee mug when the paper slipped out. But there it was in black and white, a wire transfer for $500,000 to Sarah Elizabeth Martinez with the memo, "Law school tuition, full payment." My hands started shaking. $500,000 to my sister for law school. Let me back up for a second. 3 years earlier, when I was 24, I had asked my father for help with community college tuition, just $8,000 for my associate degree in business administration. I remember sitting in his home office, surrounded by his awards and expensive furniture, practically begging him to help me get an education. "Rebecca," he had said, not even looking up from his computer, "you need to be realistic about your capabilities. College isn't for everyone. You're better suited for practical work. There's nothing wrong with working at a diner. It's honest work." When I pressed him, explaining how I had straight A's in high school and how much this meant to me, he got irritated. "I'm not throwing money away on pipe dreams. Sarah has the academic potential to make something of herself. You should focus on what you're naturally good at." What I was naturally good at, apparently, was serving coffee and cleaning tables. But my sister Sarah, she had gotten into law school, and now I was staring at proof that our father had written her a check for more money than most people make in 10 years. The full amount, up front, no questions asked. I sat down hard in his kitchen chair, still holding that statement. The numbers seemed to blur as I tried to process what I was seeing. All those times I had worked double shifts just to afford textbooks. All those nights I had fallen asleep over my laptop, trying to complete assignments after working 12-hour shifts. All those times I had eaten ramen noodles for dinner so I could save money for school supplies. And the whole time my father had this kind of money sitting in his account. Money he was willing to spend on Sarah without hesitation, but wouldn't spare $8,000 to help me. I took a picture of the statement with my phone, my hands still trembling. I needed proof because I knew that when I confronted them about this, they would find a way to make me feel like I was being unreasonable. That's how it always worked in our family. 2 days later, I arranged to meet both of them for dinner at Romano's, this Italian place where we used to go for family celebrations. I figured a public place would keep things civilized. I was wrong about that. I waited until after we had ordered our food before I brought it up. I pulled out my phone and showed them the picture of the bank statement. "I found this at Dad's house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think we need to talk about it." My father's face went through several emotions: surprise, annoyance, then something that looked almost like guilt before settling into defensive anger. "That's private financial information, Rebecca. You had no right to look at that." I wasn't looking for it. It was just sitting there. But that's not the point, Dad. The point is that you gave Sarah $500,000 for law school. But when I asked for $8,000 for community college, you told me I wasn't smart enough for higher education. Sarah, who had been stirring her pasta and pretending not to listen, finally looked up. She had this expression on her face, not surprise, not guilt, not even embarrassment. She looked annoyed that I had brought it up. "Rebecca, you're being dramatic," she said, rolling her eyes. Dad was just being practical about our different strengths. I mean, law school is a significant investment that requires a certain level of academic capability. You're more of a hands-on learner. I stared at her, my own sister sitting there in her designer clothes that our father had probably paid for, telling me that I wasn't smart enough to deserve the same opportunities she had been given. Practical, I repeated. "Sarah, you partied your way through undergraduate school with a 2.8 GPA. I graduated high school with a 3.9 GPA and had to work 2 jobs just to afford community college classes." That's when my father leaned forward, his voice getting that sharp edge it always got when he was about to say something cutting. "Rebecca, you're only good enough for a diner job, and there's nothing wrong with that. Stop trying to be something you're not. Sarah has the intellectual capacity to become a successful attorney. You need to accept your limitations and be grateful for what you have." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my face get hot, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. My own father, sitting across from me in a restaurant, telling me that my dreams were too big for someone like me. But Sarah wasn't done. She actually smirked. I'll never forget that smirk, and said, "Just be practical, Rebecca. Not everyone is cut out for professional careers. Dad's just trying to help you understand your place." My place, like I was some kind of servant in my own family. I stood up from the table, my legs feeling unsteady. "You know what? You're right. I am being practical. I'm being practical enough to walk away from people who treat me like I'm worthless." I left them sitting there with their expensive dinners and drove home to my tiny studio apartment above the diner where I worked. That night, I sat on my bed and cried harder than I had since I was a child. But somewhere in the middle of that breakdown, something shifted inside me. Growing up, I had always known that Sarah was the favorite. It wasn't subtle. My parents made it clear in 1,000 little ways that she was the golden child and I was something less. When Sarah got accepted to private high school, they celebrated with a family dinner and posted about it on social media. When I made honor roll at my public school, my mother said, "That's nice, dear," and went back to reading her magazine. When Sarah crashed her car in college, Dad bought her a new one within a week. When my bike got stolen and I asked if they could help me buy a used car so I could get to work more easily, they told me that walking was good exercise and would build character. For years, I had told myself that this was just how families worked, that parents had to make difficult decisions about resources, that maybe they did see something in Sarah that they didn't see in me. I had convinced myself that their treatment of me was somehow justified, that I really was the less capable daughter who needed to be satisfied with less. But $500,000 changed everything. $500,000 proved that this wasn't about fairness or practical decisions or limited resources. This was about 2 parents who had decided that one daughter was worth investing in and the other daughter was worth nothing. I started thinking about all the times I had made excuses for them, like when I graduated from high school and they didn't come to the ceremony because Sarah had a tennis tournament the same day. Or when I won a scholarship for academic excellence, and they barely acknowledged it because Sarah had gotten into her first choice college. Or when I got promoted to shift supervisor at the diner, and they seemed almost embarrassed when people asked about my job. The pattern was so clear once I allowed myself to see it. Sarah was the sun, and I was expected to be grateful for whatever light reflected off her. But here's what my father didn't know about me. I had been keeping track of everything, not intentionally at first, but I had always been good with numbers and details. I knew that Sarah's private high school tuition had been $38,000 a year. I knew that her college expenses had totaled over $200,000. I knew that when she wanted to study abroad in Europe for a semester, they had paid for that too, another $15,000. Meanwhile, I had calculated that in the 5 years since high school, I had asked my parents for financial help exactly 3 times. $8,000 for community college tuition, $1,500 when I needed emergency dental work, and $2,000 when my apartment's heating system broke in the middle of winter and I needed help covering the temporary hotel costs. Total, $11,500. They had said no to all of it. So when I saw that bank statement showing $500,000 for Sarah's law school, I realized I was looking at more than just favoritism. I was looking at a deliberate system of investment and disinvestment, designed to ensure that one daughter succeeded and the other daughter stayed exactly where they wanted her to stay. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to argue with them anymore. I wasn't going to try to prove that I deserved better treatment. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of attention or affection or financial support. Instead, I was going to prove them wrong. Not by asking for their help, not by demanding that they acknowledge my worth, but by building something so undeniably successful that they would have to confront their own mistakes. I opened my laptop and started researching. I looked up the graduation rates for Sarah's law school. I researched bar exam pass rates. I looked into the average starting salaries for new attorneys and the percentage who actually found employment in their field within 6 months of graduation. What I found was interesting, very interesting. Sarah's law school had a graduation rate of only 72%. Their bar exam pass rate was 68%. And of the students who did pass the bar, only 45% found employment as attorneys within their first year out of school. Meanwhile, the business administration program I had been studying had a 96% job placement rate, with graduates averaging $48,000 starting salary in our area. Not lawyer money, but solid, reliable income with room for growth. I started thinking about my father's business. He owned 3 auto repair shops and had always complained about finding reliable bookkeepers and office managers. Most small business owners in our area had the same problem. They were great at their trades, but struggled with the business side of things. That's when I saw my opportunity. I had been working at Murphy's Diner for 3 years, and I was good at it. I could handle the morning rush, manage inventory, deal with difficult customers, and keep the books balanced. But more importantly, I had been quietly helping other small businesses in the area with their bookkeeping on weekends. Nothing major, just helping them organize their receipts, set up basic accounting systems, prepare for tax season. Word had gotten around, and I had more requests for help than I could handle while working full-time at the diner. People liked working with me because I was reliable, honest, and I didn't charge the ridiculous rates that the big accounting firms charged. I did the math. If I could build up a client base of 20 small businesses, each paying me $500 a month for bookkeeping services, that would be $10,000 a month, more than I was making at the diner, with the potential to grow. But it would require taking a huge risk. I would need to invest in accounting software, get bonded and insured, maybe take some additional certification courses. I would need to quit my steady job at the diner and trust that I could build something sustainable. Most people would have asked their family for support during a transition like that. But I knew that wasn't an option. My father had made it clear that he didn't believe I was capable of running a professional business. My mother had always deferred to his judgment about these things. And Sarah would probably laugh at the idea of her diner-working sister trying to start her own company. So I made another decision. I was going to do this completely on my own. No family money, no family connections, no family support. If I succeeded, it would be entirely because of my own work and intelligence. And if they ever came to me needing help, which, based on my father's track record with business decisions, was entirely possible, they would have to acknowledge that they had been wrong about me. I gave Murphy's Diner 2 weeks' notice and started making phone calls to potential clients. The first year of building my bookkeeping business was the hardest thing I had ever done. I started with exactly 4 clients: Mrs. Chen, who owned the flower shop on Main Street, Tony from the auto body shop, Maria, who ran the bakery, and Jim, who owned a small construction company. Each of them paid me $300 a month to organize their books, handle their invoicing, and prepare their quarterly tax reports. $1,200 a month wasn't much, especially after paying for business insurance, accounting software, and my tiny office space above the hardware store. But it was mine. Every dollar I earned came from my own work, my own intelligence, my own problem-solving abilities. There was something incredibly powerful about that independence, especially after years of being told I wasn't capable of professional success. I worked 7 days a week those first few months. During the day, I would visit my clients' businesses, organizing their paperwork and setting up systems. In the evenings, I would input data, reconcile accounts, and prepare reports. On weekends, I would cold call potential new clients and take continuing education courses to improve my skills. Meanwhile, I was hearing things about Sarah through the family grapevine. My Aunt Linda, who had always been more neutral in the family dynamics, would occasionally mention Sarah's progress in law school during our brief phone conversations. The picture she painted wasn't exactly what my father had probably hoped for when he wrote that $500,000 check. Sarah had failed 2 classes in her first semester and had to retake them over the summer. She was struggling with constitutional law and had already changed her focus area twice. More concerning, she had developed what Linda delicately called social habits that were interfering with her studies. She's been seen at those expensive clubs downtown quite often, Linda told me during one of our conversations. Your father thinks it's just normal social networking for future lawyers, but some of the stories I'm hearing. She trailed off, not wanting to gossip too directly. I didn't take pleasure in hearing about Sarah's struggles exactly, but I couldn't deny that there was a certain validation in knowing that all that money wasn't automatically translating into success. It confirmed what I had suspected, that achievement comes from work and dedication, not from having wealthy parents who believe in you. By month 6 of my business, I had 8 clients and was bringing in $2,400 a month. I had moved to a better office space and hired a part-time assistant to help with data entry. Word was spreading through the small business community that Martinez Bookkeeping Services was reliable, affordable, and actually understood the challenges that small business owners faced. That's when I got the call that would change everything. "Rebecca, this is Janet from Riverside Manufacturing. I got your number from Tony at the auto body shop. He says you're the best bookkeeper in the county." Riverside Manufacturing was one of the largest employers in our area, a mid-sized factory that produced automotive parts for major car companies. They weren't a small business like my usual clients. They were a real company with real revenue and complex financial needs. "We've been having problems with our current accounting firm," Janet continued. "They're expensive, slow, and they don't seem to understand our industry. Tony says you're not only competent, but that you actually care about helping businesses succeed. Would you be interested in discussing a consulting contract?" I tried to keep my voice steady as we scheduled a meeting, but inside I was screaming with excitement. If I could land Riverside Manufacturing as a client, it would legitimize my business in a way that no amount of small client success could match. The meeting went better than I could have hoped. Janet introduced me to the company's owner, Robert Henley, who had been frustrated with his current accounting firm for months. They were charging him $12,000 a month for services that often contained errors and were consistently delivered late. "I need someone who understands that cash flow is the lifeblood of manufacturing," he told me. "These big accounting firms treat us like we're just another number. They don't understand that when I need financial reports, I need them because I'm making decisions that affect 60 employees and their families." I spent 3 hours in that initial meeting asking questions about their processes, their challenges, their goals. I took notes on everything from their inventory management systems to their seasonal fluctuations in revenue. By the end of the meeting, I had outlined a comprehensive financial management system that would not only handle their bookkeeping, but would provide them with real-time insights into their business performance. "When can you start?" Robert asked. The Riverside Manufacturing contract was worth $8,000 a month. Combined with my other clients, I was suddenly making more money than I had ever imagined possible. But more than that, I was doing work that mattered. I was helping a real company optimize their operations, improve their cash flow, and make better business decisions. Within 18 months of starting my business, I had 15 clients ranging from small shops to mid-sized manufacturing companies. I had hired 2 full-time employees and was considering expanding into business consulting beyond just bookkeeping. My monthly revenue had reached $18,000, and after expenses, I was personally earning more than twice what I had made at the diner. That's when I started hearing the first whispers about Sarah's problems. It began with a call from my cousin David, who lived near Sarah's law school. "Hey, Rebecca, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I think your sister might be in some trouble." Apparently, Sarah had been caught cheating on a major constitutional law exam. The incident had triggered an academic review process that could potentially result in her expulsion from law school. Even if she managed to avoid expulsion, the ethics violation would likely prevent her from being admitted to the bar in most states. The word around campus is that she's been buying essays and paying other students to take some of her online exams, David told me. She apparently thought she could coast through law school the same way she coasted through undergrad. I felt a complicated mix of emotions hearing this news. Part of me felt vindicated. This was proof that money and favoritism couldn't buy genuine achievement. But part of me also felt sad for Sarah. She had been given every advantage, every opportunity, and she had squandered them because she had never learned the value of hard work. The academic review process dragged on for months. During this time, I heard through family channels that my father was spending even more money trying to fix Sarah's problems. He hired expensive attorneys to represent her in the academic proceedings. He donated money to the law school's scholarship fund. He even flew to the school multiple times to meet with administrators personally. None of it worked. By the end of Sarah's second year, she was expelled from law school for academic dishonesty. $500,000 of tuition money, plus whatever my father had spent on lawyers and attempted bribes, all wasted. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Around the same time that Sarah was being expelled from law school, my father's business started running into serious problems. You see, Dad had always been good at the mechanical side of running auto repair shops, but he had never been particularly skilled at the business side. His bookkeeping was a mess, his inventory management was inefficient, and his customer billing system was so disorganized that he was regularly losing money on completed jobs. For years, he had been using a large accounting firm that charged him premium rates but provided mediocre service. They would deliver his financial reports months late. Their invoicing was often incorrect, and they had never once provided him with insights that actually helped him improve his business operations. Meanwhile, word was spreading throughout the local business community about Martinez bookkeeping services. The success stories from Riverside Manufacturing and my other clients were becoming legendary among small business owners. People were talking about how I had helped Tony increase his profit margins by 20%. How I had identified cost savings that saved Maria's bakery from bankruptcy, and how my financial systems had helped Jim's construction company win larger contracts by providing more accurate bidding information. It was inevitable that someone would mention my success to my father. What I didn't expect was how he would react to that information. The call came on a Thursday evening in October, almost 3 years after that disastrous dinner at Romano's. I was working late in my office, reviewing quarterly reports for one of my manufacturing clients, when my phone rang. "Rebecca, this is your father." His voice sounded different than I remembered. Less confident, less authoritative. There was something almost tentative about the way he said my name. "Hi, Dad." I kept my voice neutral, professional. I've been hearing things about your business, about how well you're doing." "Oh, Robert Henley from Riverside Manufacturing is a friend of mine. He's been telling people that you're the best bookkeeper he's ever worked with. Says you've revolutionized how he thinks about his business finances." I didn't respond immediately. I was curious to see where this conversation was going. "Rebecca, I think I may have made some mistakes. About you, about your capabilities. I'm wondering if we could talk." "What kind of talk, Dad?" There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost embarrassed. "My business is in trouble. The accounting firm I've been using has made some serious errors in my tax filings. I owe the IRS more money than I have in cash, and my books are such a mess that I can't even figure out exactly how much I owe or how to fix it. I could use some help from someone who actually knows what they're doing. The irony was so perfect it almost took my breath away. My father, who had told me I was only good enough for a diner job, was calling to ask for help with the exact skills he had dismissed as beyond my capabilities. "I see," I said carefully. "And you're calling me because everyone says you're the best in the area, because you understand small business operations in a way that these big accounting firms don't, because," he paused again, "because I was wrong about you, and I need help from someone I can trust." Trust. That was an interesting word choice from someone who had shown me so little respect for so many years. "What exactly are you looking for, Dad?" "I need someone to clean up my books, deal with the IRS situation, and help me restructure my business operations so this doesn't happen again. I know it's a big job, and I know I haven't. I know things have been complicated between us, but I'm hoping you might consider helping me." I leaned back in my office chair, looking out the window at the parking lot where my 3-year-old Honda was parked next to my employees' cars. 3 years ago, I had been crying in my studio apartment, devastated by my family's rejection. Now my father was calling me for professional help, acknowledging that I had expertise he needed. "This would be a business relationship," I said finally. "You would be a client, just like any other client. That means you pay my standard rates, you follow my recommendations, and you treat me and my staff with professional respect." "Of course, whatever your rates are, I'll pay them. My rate for tax resolution and business restructuring is $15,000 a month, with a 6-month minimum contract, half paid up front." There was silence on the other end of the line. I knew that $45,000 up front was probably more cash than he had readily available, given his current financial problems. That's significant," he said finally. "That's what expertise costs, Dad. If you'd rather work with someone else, I can recommend a few other firms." No, you're right. If I want the best, I need to pay for the best. Can we meet tomorrow to discuss the details?" After I hung up the phone, I sat in my office for a long time, processing what had just happened. My father, who had refused to loan me $8,000 for community college, was about to pay me $45,000 for business consulting. My father, who had told me I wasn't smart enough for professional work, was asking for my professional expertise to save his business. The next day, he came to my office. It was the first time he had ever seen my workspace, and I could tell he was surprised by how professional and established it looked. My office occupied the entire second floor of a renovated downtown building. I had a conference room, individual offices for my staff, and sophisticated computer systems running multiple accounting programs. "This is impressive," he said, looking around. "I had no idea your operation was this substantial." "Most people don't until they need professional bookkeeping services," I replied. We spent 2 hours going through his financial situation. It was worse than I had expected. The accounting firm had made errors going back 3 years, resulting in underpaid taxes, missed deductions, and penalty fees that had compounded into a massive debt. His business accounts were so disorganized that he couldn't even tell me his accurate monthly expenses. "How did it get this bad?" I asked. He looked embarrassed. "I thought that expensive meant good. I figured if I was paying premium rates, I was getting premium service. I never questioned their work because I assumed they knew better than I did. It was the ironic echo of the assumptions he had made about Sarah's education. Expensive meant good, prestigious meant successful. He had never learned to evaluate actual competence versus perceived status. It's going to take significant work to fix this, I told him. We'll need to reconstruct your books going back 3 years, file amended tax returns, negotiate with the IRS, and completely overhaul your business systems. Are you prepared for that level of change? Whatever it takes, he said. I can't lose my businesses. They're all I have left. That last comment caught my attention. What do you mean, all you have left? He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Sarah's situation has been expensive. The legal fees alone cost me over $100,000. And now He paused. She's having trouble finding work. Turns out that being expelled from law school for academic dishonesty makes it difficult to find employment in any professional field. What is she doing now? She's working as a paralegal at a small firm for $28,000 a year. After everything I invested in her education, he trailed off, shaking his head. The contrast was staggering. Sarah, the golden child who had received over $700,000 in educational investment, was making $28,000 a year. Meanwhile, I was running a business that generated over $200,000 annually. Over the next 6 months, I worked with my father to completely rebuild his business operations. We implemented new accounting systems, renegotiated his tax debt with the IRS, streamlined his inventory management, and trained his staff on proper financial procedures. By the end of the process, his businesses were not only solvent but more profitable than they had ever been. But more importantly, our working relationship had forced him to confront some uncomfortable truths about his assumptions and prejudices. He had to acknowledge in concrete terms that I possessed skills and intelligence that he had dismissed. He had to admit that his investment strategies for his daughters had been fundamentally flawed. The real turning point came during our final meeting to review his restructured business plan. He looked across the conference table at me and said, "Rebecca, I owe you an apology, a big one." "For what specifically?" I asked. I wanted him to say it out loud. "For underestimating you. For treating you like you weren't capable of success. For refusing to invest in your education while throwing money at Sarah's problems. For telling you that you were only good enough for a diner job when you're clearly one of the most competent business professionals I've ever worked with." It was the acknowledgement I had wanted for years, but hearing it felt different than I had expected. Instead of triumph, I felt a kind of sad relief. My father was finally seeing me clearly, but it had taken years of proving myself independently before he was willing to look. "I accept your apology," I said, "but I need you to understand that our relationship going forward will be different. I'm not the same person who used to beg for your approval. I've built something significant without your help, and I don't need your validation to know my worth." He nodded. "I understand, and I'm proud of what you've accomplished. I should have been supporting you all along instead of holding you back." 6 months later, I got another call. This time it was Sarah. "Rebecca, I was wondering if we could talk." Her voice sounded different too, less confident, less entitled. There was a humility there that I had never heard before. "What about?" "I've been thinking about what happened between us, about the things I said at that dinner, about how I treated you over the years. I was wrong about everything." I waited for her to continue. "I lost my job at the law firm last week. They said I wasn't meeting their performance standards. I'm having trouble finding another position because word gets around in legal circles about why I was expelled from law school. I'm probably going to have to look for work outside the legal field entirely. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. Dad told me about how you helped save his business. He says you're one of the most successful business owners in the area now. I wanted to congratulate you and to apologize for the way I treated you. Thank you. Rebecca, I know I don't deserve to ask this, but I was wondering, do you think there might be any entry-level positions at your company? I'm willing to start at the bottom, learn whatever I need to learn. I just need a chance to prove that I can work hard and contribute something meaningful. The irony was complete. Sarah, who had smirked and told me to be practical about my career limitations, was asking me for a job. I considered her request carefully. My business was growing rapidly, and I did need additional staff. But more than that, I realized that hiring Sarah might be the best thing for both of us. It would give her a chance to learn the value of actual work, and it would demonstrate to our entire family that success comes from effort and character, not from favoritism and financial advantage. Sarah, I'm willing to consider it, but you need to understand that working for me would mean starting at an entry-level position, earning entry-level pay, and proving yourself through performance, not through family connections. Can you handle that? Yes, she said immediately. I can handle that. I need to handle that. 3 months later, Sarah started working as a junior bookkeeping assistant at Martinez Bookkeeping Services, making $32,000 a year. It was more than she had been making as a paralegal, but it was a fraction of what our father had expected her to earn after investing over $700,000 in her education. But something interesting happened over the following months. Away from the entitled environment where she had been the golden child, Sarah began to discover what she was actually capable of when she applied herself. She was naturally good with detail work, and once she learned proper work habits, she became a valuable member of my team. More importantly, she began to understand what I had been trying to tell her for years, that worth isn't determined by how much money someone invests in you, but by what you do with the opportunities you create for yourself. One day, about 6 months after she started working for me, Sarah stopped by my office at the end of the workday. Rebecca, I wanted to thank you. For what? For giving me this job, obviously. But more than that, for showing me what real success looks like. I spent so many years thinking that having Dad's money and approval made me superior to you. I never realized that you were building something real while I was just coasting on unearned advantages. She paused, looking out the window at the parking lot, where her used Honda was parked next to my newer SUV. I'm proud to work for you, she said finally, and I'm proud to be your sister. I just wish it hadn't taken me so long to figure out what you were worth. As I watched Sarah walk to her car that evening, I reflected on how completely our family dynamics had changed. The sister who had once dismissed my capabilities was now my employee. The father who had told me I was only good enough for a diner job was now one of my most successful client case studies. But the most important change wasn't in how they saw me. It was in how I saw myself. I no longer needed their approval or validation. I had built something meaningful through my own efforts, and that success belonged entirely to me. 5 years after that devastating dinner at Romano's, my family finally understood what I had always known, that real achievement comes from hard work, integrity, and persistence, not from having wealthy parents who believe in you. And sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming so successful that the people who underestimated you have no choice but to ask for your help.